Hello and welcome to Talk to Stu with me, Stu Magoo. And in this session I am going to be talking about Motability, because there have been a lot of lies and damned lies in the press about the Motability scheme recently. And generally the right-wing press does love to try and soften the public perception towards essentially demonising disabled people, and get the public to think that it's okay to do that. And it does feed into that I'm all right Jack mentality. They're getting something and I'm not getting anything, and all of that. So I'm going to unpick that a little bit today. So what is Motability all about? Motability is a scheme that is offered to people who achieve the enhanced rate of the mobility component under the Personal Independence Payment disability benefit, allowing them to have access to a vehicle to enable them to get around. Generally speaking, most people who access this will need to have some sort of adapted vehicle to support them with their disability. The first thing is insurance. The insurance is provided by Direct Line, and it means that if you are in an accident or have somebody drive into your car, or if something goes wrong in that way that insurance would normally cover, you are not going to be negatively financially affected by that. So you're not paying a premium directly as you would if you owned your own car. So if an accident does occur, then it makes no difference at all to you. The amount you pay is the same, because yes, you do pay. I'll explain more how you pay for Motability in a moment. Also included is tyre replacement, windscreen replacement, and a few other things as well, including roadside assistance if you break down. So that's a pretty good package, and on the face of it, it gets put forward as if people are receiving this for free. And of course, nobody's receiving it for free, so I just wanted to explain how it is that people do pay for Motability. So the first thing that we do when we pay for Motability is we have to put down a deposit. Yes, the majority of vehicles that are available through the Motability scheme requires that the person who's accessing the scheme puts down a deposit out of their own money. Most people will need some form of adapted vehicle. So do the adaptations come included with it? No, they don't. In fact, the majority of adaptations have to be paid for by the person accessing the scheme out of their own money. Scooter, something like that, into the back of the vehicle, then you're going to have to buy quite a large vehicle. Now, on top of that, you are going to have to pay a large deposit, because large vehicles tend to have a larger deposit. Size matters, it seems. Then you've got to get that thing in and out of the vehicle. Now, maybe you can pick it up and lift it in there yourself, but the chances are you're probably not going to be able to. So you're going to need a ramp or a hoist, something like that, to go in. Now, they're not free. You have to pay for those things as well, and they can be quite expensive. Okay, there's quite a lot of cost going into it, first of all, just to even get you on the road. Now, there are some vehicles that are available without putting a deposit down, but they are generally very small cars, and most people with a disability will find that they're not able to use those cars because they're too small. They can't get their equipment in there, and they can't get in and out of the vehicle very easily without having a lot of adaptations put into it, such as a seat that rotates and rises. Again, something that you have to pay for yourself more than likely, and is going to be quite costly. Other adaptations that people might have in a vehicle, for example, if somebody isn't able to use their legs, then they would have to have the vehicle adapted so that the accelerator and brake were added to the sort of steering column so that they're able to do that. There are some occasions where Motability will cover these costs, but not many. Okay, you're having to spend money just to get on the road in the first place. And this is important, you lose the mobility component of your personal independence payment. So you are £300 a month worse off. Now, some people might say £300, it's not a lot. No, it isn't a lot, but that is actually the average amount that a person who buys a car on a hire purchase scheme of some kind or lease scheme, that's the average that they're paying for those vehicles anyway. So normally you would, if you were an able-bodied person who didn't have access to the scheme, you would probably be putting down a deposit of £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 for the car that you want, and then paying around £300 a month after that to have the car. Of course, you will have extra costs in terms of insurance, tyre replacement and things like that, but quite a lot of car companies, when they're selling a brand new car, will include things like that in the package. So you might pay a little bit more to have all of that wrapped up inside it. But if somebody is in a position where they can afford to buy a brand new car, even on some sort of lease deal, then the chances are they also have a protected no claims discount as well. Pretty similar to the situation you have there. But this is the thing, Motability cars, they don't operate on thin air. They don't just drive on nothing. You still have to fill them up with either petrol, diesel or electricity. And that, strangely enough, costs money. So it doesn't come out of nowhere. So people are still paying for those things. Okay, they're probably not paying road tax, but they are definitely paying tax if it's a car that runs on fuel. And we're also paying VAT on any energy that's used charging up an electric vehicle. So you're paying tax. And don't forget, you pay tax on everything you buy, with some very small exceptions. The majority of products you buy in the shop also include tax. So we're all paying tax, everyone's paying tax, we're all adding in to the system. Except we can't if people keep taking our money off us. So it seems a bit strange, if you look at it in that way, that people would be coming so harshly for the Motability scheme. And why are they doing this? They're trying to justify it with some statistics. So the statistics that are being bandied around in the mainstream media is that 1 in 5 brand new cars that are sold currently are Motability cars, and that this has increased from 1 in 8. That's true. Fewer people and fewer companies also. And why is that? 2 reasons. Firstly, the cost of living crisis. Most people who would have gone out and bought a brand new car are thinking to themselves, do you know what, I need to save money because everything's so expensive, so I'm not going to buy a brand new car. I'm going to buy a used car that's maybe 4 or 5 years old, that's a bit cheaper on the initial payment, and I'll be able to manage things a bit more effectively. I'm not going to buy a brand new one because I don't need a brand new one. As long as it's got a little bit of a warranty and it's been really nicely cleaned and the person who had it before hasn't done too much with it and the mileage is still fairly low, I can cope with that. So brand new cars aren't being sold as much to the general public as they were 3, 4 or 5 years ago. The number of people who are claiming cars through the Motability scheme, that's stayed the same, and so the ratio has changed as a result of that drop-off. Another area where there's drop-off, which has happened since COVID and the advent of people using Zoom and Teams and things like that to do work, is that there are less fleet cars being bought by businesses. So businesses aren't buying fleet cars in the same way that they used to, and this has also affected the car industry as well, which has brought the number of brand new cars being sold down, and the number of people claiming Motability cars is the same as it was. But what that has meant is that ratio has changed from 1 in 8 to 1 in 5. So it looks like more people are getting Motability vehicles when in fact they're not. The rate of people getting Motability vehicles is pretty much the same as it's always been. So why do they want to come for this and take it away? Back in 2017, George Osborne proposed something very similar to happen to personal independence payment, to restrict the amount of people that could be awarded it by changing the way the points eligibility works, which was very similar to the 4-point. What happened was that Jeremy Corbyn's opposition forced a U-turn on that situation. But is anyone going to force a U-turn this time? We're not sure. If that U-turn doesn't occur, then, and this rule is applied, then people who have Motability cars, for the time being, they'll still be keeping their Motability cars. They're not going to be losing their mobility component, but those cars are going to be much harder to run because they're not going to have the money coming into their bank account that would put petrol in the vehicle, or diesel in the vehicle, or electricity into the vehicle to charge it up. So that's going to make it less likely that they're going to be able to find a job and go to work, isn't it? If that is the case, that these people, having lost that money, then can't afford to go to work because they don't have the money to put the energy in the car, then we might as well take the car off them as well. And of course, it always comes back to this: there are lots of people. It's very difficult to get awarded PIP in the first place. It's like jumping over a mountain. If we look at it through the lens of supporting people back into work, then it doesn't make any sense at all, because that's going to do the exact opposite. But if we look at it from the point of view of they just want disabled people to shuffle off and die, then it makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Now, I'm not saying that's what they are doing, but there's no justification for the logic, even in terms of saving money, because it doesn't save money. It actually costs the country more money to demonise and punish disabled people for existing. So what is the thinking behind it? Nobody really knows, and maybe that's something that needs to be brought up with just about anybody who will listen. And of course, the right-wing news does love to stick the boot in as much as it possibly can as well, but screw them. I don't care what they think. So that's me on Motability, and it's something that I'm quite angry about. Quite angry. And I expect you are too, but please leave me a comment below. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe.